Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video. So, it seems that just this Friday, there was a new Battlefield Labs playtest, the first one in fact, I believe for the Asia region. We've recently seen that DICE are going to include players from that region, and lo and behold, a bunch of leaks have now popped up all over the internet from players in China and other countries in Asia. So it looks like one of those tests has indeed taken place, and kind of similarly to when the first test in Europe and America took place, a lot of people have started leaking stuff all over the internet. Now, I'm not sure DICE and EA are going to be able to do as much about these leaks as they can when they're up on YouTube or Reddit, for example, because all of these are being uploaded onto the Bilibili website, which is basically, I think it's like Chinese YouTube. I'm not sure if EA really have any jurisdiction there, so they're really being spread around a lot more, but there is a lot of interesting new stuff we haven't seen before. As always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, make sure you're subbed. Plenty more to come on Battlefield in the future here. And as always, thank you guys for your support. So I would say the biggest gameplay video we saw was a 52-minute video, and needless to say, I'm not going to be able to show you guys the footage here on the channel. I'm sure if you want to find it, you'll be able to Google around and find it for yourself, but I don't want to get DMCA'd here. But they were playing on two different maps. So they played on the Capstone map, which is the one up in the, I think it's in Tajikistan, up in the mountains, and then they played on the Battery map as well, which is set in Gibraltar, and they were playing this time Conquest on both of those maps. So on the Capstone map, we got a much better look at the AA tank. Again, the main takeaway for me was the incredible sound design. He was sort of sat on top of this tank, right? And the tank is aiming up at helicopters and jets in the sky, firing away, and the atmosphere there is just on another level, and this really permeates throughout the entirety of the game. I think that's my main takeaway for Battlefield 6 at the moment, is that the atmosphere of it just looks and sounds so much better than anything I've seen in a long time. It also had this large spinning radar dish on top of it, which I think is a nice addition because, especially if you're in a heli or a jet, that's going to be a bit of a giveaway that this is not a regular tank, this is an AA tank that you're looking at here. Whether they're going to be overpowered and have ridiculous range in this game, I really couldn't tell you. Now, this particular player, he actually played engineer pretty much throughout the entirety of these two rounds, and so he was using the RPG a heck of a lot, and I can tell you from the gameplay that it looks like they have very little drop. So if you are a Battlefield 4 player and you're used to the way that RPGs and even SMAWs had drop to them, and when you were trying to hit those shots off in the distance, you had to account for that, it looks like this is much more like in Battlefield 2042 with the M5 recoilless, where you really don't have to account for much drop at all. Personally, I'm not a fan of that. I think the drop made a lot of those shots even more impressive. You know, when you snipe a helicopter out of the sky, not only do you have to equate for the movement, but also for the drop depending on the distance. I just thought that was a better way to do RPGs. It was more satisfying, there was more skill to them, but obviously everything we're seeing here is still unfinished, so there is still time for them to tweak that if that's something they're going to do. Now, moving on to attack helicopters. He did get in an attack helicopter at one point. I have to say, and I've seen some stuff of jets as well, there wasn't anything from jets in this particular gameplay clip, but I have seen some on Capstone before, and both the jets and the helicopters, whilst they look and sound absolutely amazing, they really seem extremely rough and unfinished. The movement mechanics seem very akin to Battlefield 2042, which strikes me as a strange direction to go for the team because they have, from what we've seen so far, really been addressing all of the issues that we've seen the community complain about in games like Battlefield 2042, so why would they then basically copy the same flight model from that game? And therefore the only conclusion I can really come to there, guys, is that they simply aren't concentrating on vehicle play at the moment. DICE have given out a few official blog posts detailing where their focus is on Battlefield Labs testing, and they haven't mentioned vehicles at all. So my guess is that they've maybe just put in the vehicles in the state that they're in for the sake of filling out the battlefield, adding the atmosphere and the sound, and just having jets and helicopters flying overhead. But as far as actually piloting them goes, they're extremely unfinished at the moment, and just sort of there for testing purposes. Now, on the other hand, it does seem likely, based on the latest EA earnings call and the sentiments that we've heard from EA CEO Andrew Wilson, that the game is going to release later on this year. And so I'm sat here asking myself, is that enough time for them to actually get the vehicles in a good way, in a good position? Because if they don't do that, then that's really going to put a huge dent in the overall appeal of the next Battlefield game. Now, this being a brand new test for the Asian players here in Battlefield Labs, of course the first thing this guy did is crash the helicopter into the ground, and we seem to have that very familiar set of physics in the game where you can sort of drag the helicopter along the ground, you can graze it and get a few bumps, and it won't instantaneously explode as soon as it hits anything. They give you that sort of grace period that we've become used to and accustomed to, that we've got in Battlefield 2042 and other games. Maybe not so much in BF4, that was pretty hardcore. Like, if you crashed the thing into the ground, that was it, you were pretty much done. But it seems like in more modern games, they give you a little bit more leeway to recover and get back up into the sky, and this does seem to be the case here as well. The reload mechanics for the rockets look just like Battlefield 2042, so you don't reload an entire salvo. Instead, each rocket will reload individually. Couldn't really tell if attrition is a thing for vehicles. It didn't look like it. I couldn't really see any like maximum ammo or salvos on screen there. I didn't really see any UI indicators showing that you had to return to base to restock your ammo. So whilst in some of the first tests we did see attrition for the tanks, not sure if that's going to be the case for the air vehicles. However, again, coming back to just how broken they looked like, every time he went in the first person view, instead of seeing a hood that you would use to aim with, he basically just saw like the interior of the helicopter, as though the camera was tilted too far down and it was looking down at the joystick and at his knees and his legs. So I think even the camera there is completely broken. That's literally the state of the helicopters in the labs testing at the moment. Just a shoddy mess. And again, it's probably because that's not where the focus is. That's not where they're testing at the moment. But I just hope that things in the main build are significantly further along and that they are going to be able to get things in line for when the game releases. Now, after having watched this guy play for around 52 minutes, TTK in the game looks a lot slower than in Battlefield 2042, which I think overall is a good thing, and it's something that most players are going to like. It's not too slow, but it is significantly slower than 2042. However, traversal speed is also a lot slower. So what this essentially means, I guess, is let's say you're crossing a road and this exposes you to several lines of sight that you can get shot from. On the one hand, it's better because it means that you're less likely to die because the TTK is longer and you're going to have a chance to get into cover to recover, heal up, or maybe even spin around and, shoot that guy. And if you have superior aim, theoretically, you should always come out on top because the TTK is longer. But on the other hand, the traversal speed is also slower. As far as we can tell, there is no tactical sprint in this game, so it's going to take you longer to actually get across that open area, and you're going to be exposed for longer. But that also means that the person firing at you, they have to stay on target, they have to control their recoil and land more shots in order to kill you. So I think overall, this is a good compromise, and it looks like it's going in a good direction. Now let's talk a bit about destruction, because this particular player, and this was a very interesting playtest because you can tell it was their first time just based on how everybody was not really playing the objective, they were just messing around, trying things out in the game. And this particular player decided he was going to shoot every single building pretty much on the battery map, which is set in Gibraltar. And so he absolutely went ham with an RPG. He would just fire off all of his RPGs and then respawn and fire a ton more at every building. And it's become pretty clear just how destruction is going to work in the next game. So as far as I could tell, most of the upper floors of buildings where there were a lot of windows situated, the entire, not just the facade, but the whole wall of the building would just go down with one RPG. Now, I think the reason DICE have done this for most of the buildings that have windows is because they don't want people to be able to just camp in those windows, have, an incredible height advantage over the battlefield with snipers, and really become entrenched there. They want to give the defending players, especially on, game modes like Breakthrough, an opportunity to just RPG the wall, and now all of those players that are camping are exposed. However, whenever he shot a lot of the RPGs at the ground level, those walls did not get destroyed. He even shot 2 or 3 RPGs just to make sure that they needed more damage and they could not be destroyed. So it is certainly not the case that you can destroy every single building and every single wall, which obviously would be a terrible idea. Like, it can't be like the finals. We need to have some structure to the map. There has to be some walls where you can take cover behind them, which are integral to the flow of the map. And then last but not least here, we also got a nice look at the weapon customization. So we've heard a bit about this in previous leaks and data mines, but here we've actually seen a screenshot of how it works. And so far, it looks very similar to the Delta Force gunsmith for anybody familiar. You've got a box and a little line just simply pointing to the attachment. You click in the box and then you select an attachment. As for the statistics, we have 4 of them here. So we've got control, precision, hip fire, and then mobility. It also displays the damage of the weapon, the rate of fire, the magazine size, and then below that you have the reload speed in seconds, you have the velocity in meters per second, you have the headshot multiplier there as well, which is a really welcome addition. And then you also have what I believe to be the ADS speed. On this particular screenshot, it says 250 milliseconds. So like around anywhere between 200, 300, 400 is a pretty regular ADS timing in most games. So that's what I assume that to be. So that's been one of my main critiques of Battlefield games, is why can't they give us more in-depth statistics directly in-game? Why do we have to go to external websites like Simfic to look up this information by ourselves? And now it looks like DICE have finally listened and they're going to do exactly that in Battlefield 6. So pretty cool stuff so far. I like the way the game is shaping up. You know, it's looking... I don't want to hype up things too much for anybody, and the proof is in the pudding and all of that, and I still wouldn't recommend pre-ordering the game, but sort of tentatively, it looks like this could be a good Battlefield game. Like I said, there's a lot of unfinished edges here, a lot of things that remain to be refined and really figured out, especially when it comes to those vehicle mechanics, the flight mechanics especially. Are they going to be able to do that before they release the game, or is it going to be the same old thing where they hit that deadline and EA just say, right guys, it's time to release the game, no matter what the condition of it is? I sincerely hope they do give them the time that they need. You know, GTA 6 or no GTA 6, like, who bloody cares? Just release the game when it's good and finished. That's the only thing I ask. But yeah, definitely like what I'm seeing so far here. Guys, leave me your comments below. Let me know what you think of it so far as well. You know, I have seen some critique that people say, well, the game just doesn't really do anything new or interesting. It just sort of looks like a regular, standard Battlefield game. But I think that's really what the community have been asking for, that DICE don't do anything too edgy or too weird. But let's also bear in mind, the only leaks we've seen so far have been from the All Out Warfare campaign, right? We don't know anything really about the Gauntlet mode. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen the Battle Royale. We haven't seen Portal. We haven't seen the campaign. So I think it's unfair to also just judge the game based on the leaks of one single mode when that's clearly not going to be the whole package. Anyway, leave your thoughts below, guys. Leaving a like on the video is always appreciated. If you enjoyed it here today, subscribe for more Battlefield. There's going to be a lot more to come in the future. And I'll see you all in the next one.